Hey everybody, DJ here, and welcome back to the Epic Text tutorial series. This is going to be part two. And in this one, we're going to be going over how to convert this to a mesh and also set it up for some materials and stuff like that. Please take a moment and like and subscribe to the channel. That'll really help me out, and it'll help you out when the new episodes and parts are released. And let's jump into Blender now. So this is where we left off last time. And hopefully you guys all took a moment to do the beveling the way that you like and all that. You should take some time and make sure that your design is really cool looking before we do the next part. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of cleanup. So on the top right, you'll see that we have the point, which is basically our bevel. So let's go ahead and rename this to bevel curve, just so that we know what that is. And I have it currently turned off, but there it is. And let's see here. This is actually the one that I use. So I'm actually going to delete this one. Oops. So I'm actually going to delete this one. And this one I'm going to call bevel curve. And camera will leave, the light will leave, and text, we're going to call this text underscore pre-convert. Because what we're going to do is we're going to convert our text here into a mesh. And we want to make sure that we keep our old version in case we ever need to go back for some reason. We don't want to do what's called destructive work to this to where we can never go back. We want to make sure that we have it available so we can make some adjustments, redo the bevels, whatever we might want to do, and all of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, hit Shift D, and it will duplicate until you right click. You could left click to place it somewhere, but I'm going to right click, and that'll set it right back where it was. We're going to rename this up here in the tree to convert and hit enter. And then we're going to move this. We're going to move the text pre-convert, hit M here, new collection, and we're going to call this text underscore pre-convert. And over here in the tree, we're going to click the checkbox, and that'll get rid of that. The next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the bevel curve, and I'm just going to throw that into the text pre-convert by left-clicking and dragging that in. Then I'm going to take the light and the camera, and I'm going to make this a different collection. I'm going to hit M here, new collection, and we're going to call this lights and camera, or whatever you want to call it to make it make sense to you. And then for this collection here, we're going to call this text. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do before is we really need to make sure that our text is exactly what we want it to be before the convert. So I'm actually going to close these panels over here, so I just have this one. And make sure that you go to the text area here, and I'm just going to bump up the resolution a bit more. So if we take a look closely, I'm just going to reduce it a bit so you can see what happens. So we go down to here, and you can see what the resolution looks like. And the it was set at 12. You can set it to 24 if you'd like, just to make sure that there's a little bit more geometry going on here. And we can do some things to adjust it if we want, but really you just want to add a little bit of resolution if you think that yours doesn't quite look good enough. I think actually 12 looks pretty good. And, well, there is a little bit of stuff going on here. So let's try 24. That looks fine. It's a little bit more smoothed out here. Probably not visible to you guys, but I could see a little bit of chunkiness there. So once you're good with that, we're going to convert this. So if you right click, you can go down to convert to mesh right here, and then left click. And what that does is it basically sets the text here now to an editable mesh. And there are ways to make this more of a quad-based or easier quad-based system than this, but we're really not going to do that. This is going to actually work out just fine for us. So we're going to leave this as it is here. Now, before we start doing other things here, we need to make sure that this mesh is actually going to function properly. And how text is done in this program, if I click this plane here and I hit Control plus and I hold down plus, you can see that I can't actually hold or I can't actually select anything else. And if I hit G to grab this section, you can see it's not actually together. The the faces here are separate, and so is the bevel from. So if I hit this and I hit Control Plus, you can see that this bevel section here and the way it's extruded is separated. Now, for some people that may be good, but for us, this isn't really going to work because we're going to do a couple things to edit this mesh um, along with just our materials and how we want to set it. So I'm going to right click here to set it back where it was. And what we want to do is we want to basically merge these together so that they are not separated like this. So if I hit Alt A to deselect everything, I'm going to go up here to the vertex select right here. And in the window, hit A and then M. And what that does is it's going to merge by distance. And it automatically starts down here. Basically, if they're doubled up points, it will merge them together. And when we check this again after it's merged, if I click this and I hit Control Plus, you can see that now it has been merged together. I'm going to hit Alt A to deselect everything. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to start adding our materials to specific areas or specific faces on our text here. So let's just go ahead and just add what we know we want to do, okay, or at least what I want to do. So first, for the first material, I am going to call this one face. And this is going to be for the front and the back face, okay? And then I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to call this um, sides. Okay, and the sides are basically going to be all of these. So here, 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 and right there. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call one bevel. So new bevel, and I'm kind of mixing these up here. So let's just keep it the same. So capital B Evel. Okay. And that is going to be for all of these here. Okay. Then the last one is going to be an emission material, and I'm going to call this light, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that the edge right on the inside is actually going to illuminate the front face of the text, okay? So let's go ahead and start assigning these. But before we do, let's look at our material edge or material stuff over here. Normally, I would say you want to look at this in the node editor, but we're not going to do that here. We're just going to change some of these colors really quickly just so that we can tell that the sides are a bit different, okay? Or that all of these things are a bit different. So when we start applying them, we can actually see that happening, okay? So for light, we're going to just make this one green. For bevel, I'm going to make this one red. For sides, I'm going to make this one blue. And then for face, I'm going to make this one purple or pink. Okay. So, and that's just so that we can have this a little bit color coded when we start to look at this in the previewer to see that everything has been addressed correctly. There's other ways to do this, but this is the way that I'm going to do it because it's the easiest to show you guys. So let's go into edit mode here, and we want to make sure we're on face select. And the first thing I actually want to do is I want to do all of the sides all together. So if I hit 3 and then I go to wireframe and make sure that X-ray is turned on up here in the top right, make sure that you have the select box over here on your tools, hit T if you don't see those, draw a marquee or a box around this section here, click on sides and then hit assign. Okay, and I hit it a couple times just to make sure. I hit Alt A there just to deselect everything. And to make sure that it is done correctly, we can hit this select button here, and you can see that all of those faces are now selected. So when I hit material preview here, you can see that now there is a blue side. Okay. And all of them are pink right now because all of them have the face one on it right now. Okay. So let's go back to solid view here. And what we're going to do next is we're going to grab the areas called light. And I want to show you a really, really cool way or easy way to navigate around your scene when you're finding that the default is getting really, really cumbersome. Okay. And this helps when you're sculpting and when you're doing some mesh edits and in general modeling and stuff like that. So If you go up to Edit, Preferences, in the navigation section here, change the auto to depth and remove the orbit around selection checkbox. Okay, so just take that check off. And now the orbiting rotation is going to be around wherever the cursor is when you hit the middle mouse wheel down to rotate. Okay, so it's going to be a lot easier for us to navigate around our scene without having to constantly click on an object or a face and then hit period to like zoom in on it or whatever. Okay. So if we take a look at this, I know that the edge right up under here is what I want the light or emission source to be. And this is seeing how awkward the camera angle is here to select this. This is why I wanted to show you how to change that that navigation perspective. Okay, so if we zoom in over here, I'm going to hold Alt, left click to select that loop, go to the period down here, hold Shift and Alt to select that as well, and do that for the rest of these sections that I want to grab. Okay, so basically all of the like little bit of the bevel that's pointed inwards towards the face, I want to be this material here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Assign and click it a couple times just to make sure that it's done. Then if I go to Material Preview, you should see that little green bit right there to show you that those are now a different material. Okay, pretty cool. Now, for the face, it's already all selected, but I actually want to show you a way to select all these faces just so that you know how to do it, okay? So if I go to solid mode here, and I'm going to hit save here, and I select this front face, and I want to select this back face here. And what I want to happen is I want the program to say select everything that is coplanar with this thing that I have selected here, okay? Or these faces. And what you can do is hit F3 and start to type in select similar, and then you can select this right here that says coplanar, okay? And down in the bottom, there should be a little drop down. If you open this up, sorry that the keyboard down here in the bottom left is in the way, and the screencast keys there. But you can see there it says coplanar equal, okay? And keep those like that. Oops. Oh, let's try that again. F3, select similar, coplanar, okay? And then you'll see this threshold here. And if you left click and drag, you can actually see that it starts to add and remove stuff based on uh, the threshold of the planes that we have selected. But to keep it to where it's just exactly even across the board of everything that we currently have selected, I want to just make sure that this is at 0 and that it just grabs the stuff that's exactly the same plane as the ones I have selected. And from this point, you could go to face and hit assign if you wanted to, if that's how you're doing it. But since this is already assigned to it, we really don't need to do that. So probably the best way to handle this, since I've already have this as face, and really this is the easiest area to select besides the bevel. It's kind of a pain to select all these bevels here. What I can actually do is change this around. Instead, I'm going to call this bevel. I'll put a 1 here. Change this to face. Okay. And I'll remove this 1 here. And what we can do now is we can actually select these. So select this front face here, select this back face, go to the select similar coplanar, and then just go to face and assign it. Okay. And if we look at it now, the red is the face, the pink is now the bevel, and the light is the green, and the sides are the blue. Okay, so sorry if I lost you there. Basically, all I did was I changed the since I knew that I wanted these selected here, all of these bevels, instead of selecting those specific areas, I just and knowing that the face was easier to select, I just changed the other material to a different name and then selected the thing that was the easiest, which were the faces, did the coplanar select mode, and then just assigned it to that new material instead of doing the other way around. So it really doesn't matter. These are just workflow things here. As long as you get something that looks similar to this, that's all that really matters here. Okay. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to adjust our text to make sure that everything is falling properly in line and that we can actually see this sitting on a floor plane. So let's add a floor plane here. If we go to object mode, out of edit mode from here, add Shift A, mesh, plane, and I'm going to hit S, hold Control, and just pull it up to be pretty big, just like that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control A to apply the scale. You want to make sure that you're applying your scale and stuff like that because it will mess things up later. I'm going to select my text here and I hit 1 to go to the front view. And if we look here, the floor plane is the red X. This is the X axis here, okay? You can see that it's kind of going through the floor. So if I hit G and then I hit Z to lock it on the Z axis and then I pull it up, you can see that it's not exactly sitting on the floor. The J is sort of like either the dots are kind of floating and the D is floating or things are sinking through the ground. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to zoom in, grab it on Z, pull it up to about here, like a nice happy medium, okay? Something like that, because we don't want it floating and we don't want it sinking through the ground, okay? Then I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to go to wireframe and I'm going to grab this D here and I'm just going to grab it on Z and pull it down, okay? And we can put it right about here. And the little bit that that part of the D is floating is going to be negligible. I could go in and pull some other stuff down, but I really don't think it's necessary for the purposes of this particular tutorial series. But if I wanted to, I could go in here, grab these bottom planes here, grab it on Z and pull it down if I wanted to. Okay, so if you're finding that to be an issue, feel free to do that. I'm not going to do it because I don't think it's going to cause that much of a problem. Okay. The next thing I want to do is the dot here. I don't really like how far away it is. I kind of want it closer to this part right here, the D. So if I go into edit mode, go to wireframe, and zoom out far enough to where I can see everything, make sure that you have the toggle X-ray on here. Use the box select, hit G, hit X, and move it on X. And there we have that set in between the D and the J. And then this one here, if I wanted to, I can grab it and pull it a little bit closer. And if the distance here bothers you, you can grab the top of the J, just like I showed you with the D, and you can pull this down and shorten this if you want. But again, I think that's negligible, so I'm not really going to worry about that. Okay. And now you'll have a more correct, or to me it's a little bit more correct. There's still a little bit going through the ground, which I could adjust if I wanted to, and I might do that later, but for now I think this is fine, and I'm sure that in the render I'm not really going to see some of that stuff. Okay, so this is pretty much ready for us to start applying materials. And just so that you can see what this is looking like, I'm going to show you how to do some really quick materials just to like preview what's going on, because the next part is actually going to be very in depth, because we have to make custom materials. Not only are we going to make PBR materials, or physically based rendering materials, we're also going to be creating a volumetric sort of lighting in the scene, which changes how reflections are done inside of cycles. So I'm going to show you how to do a whole bunch of stuff, but that really needs its own part. But I'm sure you want to see what this looks like because you're itching to see what some materials look like and how this might look in a render. So let's go ahead and head over to the shading tab, and it already sets up in Eevee. And what I want to do here is I'm actually going to change this to cycles. We're not going to be using Eevee for this. If you want to use Eevee, that's fine. But for really good volumetrics, you need to use cycles. Okay. So we're going to switch it over to cycles. And I'm actually going to change the settings here in the navigation back to orbiting around the selection, because it's a little bit easier to view your object in this way. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the face first, and I'm going to go to material preview, which this is the Eevee engine, so we could just preview some of these materials. I'm going to change this to a metallic. I'm going to change the base color to a darker gray. I'm going to add some anisotropy to it for a metal, and make sure the roughness is I'll set the roughness to somewhere like this for right now. We can't see the anisotropy on Eevee with these preview settings, but that's fine. The next thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to go to the sides, change this to a black or a dark color, and take the roughness down a little bit, and take the specular, maybe move it up a little bit, and we'll call that good. Then I want to take the face, or sorry, the light here, and I'm actually going to delete the principled BSDF, and I'm going to hit Shift A and add. Let me actually pull up the screencast keys again. There we go. And we're going to add a emission shader. Take the strength, move it up to 50, and you're not going to really see it yet, but this is fine. This is just the preview in Eevee. Go to the bevel, and let's make this something different. Let's actually go to the base color. Let's make it orange. And let's take the roughness and we'll move it down a little bit. And that'll be fine for right now. So the next thing that we're going to do, change this to rendered. And we can kind of take a look at what this looks like. I'm actually going to change this instead of CPU. I'm going to do GPU compute. And look at it in rendered. Save. And this is what it looks like right now. Let's actually take the ground plane. I'm going to add a new material. So I clicked material here. After I click the ground plane, new material. Take this down to a dark color like a black. Take the roughness down a little bit and bump the specular up. And now the thing that you're seeing here is it looks a little bit kind of boring, and that's because there's no HDRI. And what's really cool is there actually is a way that you can turn on the background or the material preview lights. You can actually show that in the rendered view here. And how you do that, you just click this button here. You see where it says Scene World. Deselect this right here, and you can choose one of these other HDRIs that are already built in. And we can kind of start to preview what our text might look like in our final if this is the materials or if these are the materials that we were going to put on it. But this is only part of it. We are not done yet. There's still a lot to do with this project to make this text look epic, and that'll be covered in the future parts. So thanks so much for following along with me on this part of the Epic Text tutorial series. Please make sure to like and subscribe the video, and I will see you guys next time on DJ Tutorials.